Alrighty folks, this is Lurch from Ireland Gaming and welcome to my Back to Basics series where I'm going to be giving you some basic aesthetic tricks and some little tips on how to make your little block ship a little bit prettier. A block ship is exactly what we have at the minute and it's a pretty functional little vessel. It does very well and it can take on a Kalmar and some of the starter deepwater guard ships very well, but she doesn't look that pretty. Won't win first prize at a beauty contest anyway. So let's do let's make some changes to improve how she looks. The reason I build ships often like this is so that I can sort of sculpt the hull later, and the first thing we're obviously going to need is symmetry, because symmetry makes things prettier. A good start is to round out your hull and make it sort of a little bit more slopey. Well, that's how I like to do it anyway, so let's start at the front. We'll grab the wood blocks and go with wooden slopes. And you use the shift replace key to replace blocks. Very handy. Now the corners here are, well, they don't look very cornery, so let's use these ones instead. Okay. Now this doesn't match up. Okay, this doesn't match up. And let's lift the ship out of the water so we can see what we're doing a little better. So we now have a bit of a nose. Now, this is actually a good start in working out where you can go from this. A good way to sort of shape around the outside of the hull is just to sort of connect the blocks from a simple start, because there's only really one way that you can do them, and that was an accident. Now, let's use a little bit of metal trim to make this corner bit look a little bit more interesting. It'll also give us a bit more armour. There, that looks pretty cool. It's a start. We should probably add metal triangle corners at the front too. Now this bottom bit doesn't look that great. We're going to need something to fill in here. Let's grab the inverted triangle corners. These have that bit cut out so we can fit it on there perfectly. We're going to have to do that all the way down the hull now. Now we're going to have to fill the triangles in. Very nice. All of a sudden, we have a much sleeker looking front of our hull. The bottom here could probably use some metal trim as well, the same as the top, so let's do that. Nice, our ship looks a whole bunch better now, I think. What do you think? But it could definitely do with a lick of paint, and this cram cannon could maybe benefit from being prettied up a little as well. You can press the right square bracket key to switch through the sub-objects on your ship. This is how we're going to get to the cram cannon here. Now, what are we going to do here? Remember to turn symmetry back on every time you go to a sub-object. We'll just use wooden blocks, because they're not really going to provide so much armour anyway. Well, that makes our turret look a little bit better anyway. So with just those a few simple changes, it looks a lot more like a boat and a lot less like a box, which is definitely an improvement. Now that our ship is looking a little bit better, I think it's time for a paint job, because that will definitely help out. You can use these paint blocks at the bottom, or these colour palettes at the bottom, to colour parts of your ship. And you just need to click the painting mode to go into painting mode. That allows you to change the colour of the blocks without actually deleting anything. I have all of these set up, and these are the same across all of your ships. They're your fleet colours, and it's what I paint pretty much everything with. It also means that if you change one of these, it changes it on all of your ships, which is kind of cool. You can also use these colour palettes, and they are all unique to each ship. So if you change this on this vessel, it will be different on every other vessel. So let's get our main colour. I generally like to start with my secondary colour, ironically, but I started that way around and it's what I'm stuck with now. And if you press the middle mouse button, it puts it into constant click mode and lets us just sort of move the mouse cursor around and paint things as we go. This might take a little bit of time. Don't forget your symmetry though, that's really important. Speeds this thing up, literally twice as fast. Okay, so that's everything painted in a blanket black. You can sort of cheat by just changing the default color, but this obviously changed it for all parts, so I like to go back and paint everything afterwards. You could also, if you had more sense, just paint it as you go, but I actually find this can be quite difficult if you're using dark colors to actually see what you're doing. So I just paint everything afterwards. It takes more time, but you can sort of think about it more because you know what the complete object looks like. Now, we're going to get a new color here. I have a slightly darker red, and I use this for the cram cannon parts because I find that they're often a little bit darker or a little bit lighter with the other colors. That I think might be a bit too much. A good thing to think about with your colors is to try and keep them contrasting and simple. Don't go with something really, really bright all around the ship, because then you have no contrast, and that can make it just look really garish. So that actually might be a bit too much red, I think. Normally what I do with my cannons is I put one red strip right down the middle. Let's try that. Nice and simple and effective. Great! While we're on the topic of aesthetics, we could actually change up the sides of these so that they look a little bit more interesting. Let's go into the cram cannon parts and use some of these gauge increasers to make it a bit more interesting. We will build in the right color this time. I'm going to orientate this way and turn this one upside down. And then I think I'm going to use these tops. I like the effect that they give. That way, and that way, that way, and that way. And that gives a funky little indent in that. Sound like cool? Yeah, I think that's probably enough in terms of detailing there. So let's move on to the hull and do sort of a similar thing with the hull. Unfortunately, because of the way I have these blocks placed, I can't do a single strip down the middle, which is kind of annoying, but we'll kind of work around it. Let's just do the sides here instead. Back into painting mode. Right now, I'm just putting in a little bit more detail because what we have now isn't really all that much, so that looks a bit funny. Try the darker red. That looks much better. So we're most of the way there, but everything's pretty dark. We could use some highlights or something to make things a bit more interesting. Let's look for some cosmetic parts. Oh, we have light fittings, eh? Lights typically look pretty damn cool, so let's try some of them. I'm trying to find a place where it sort of fits. You can press Q to bring up the light menu here, and I think I want a really dark red. But we can turn the intensity up and turn this down to make it sort of duller. So we're at 25 and 10. Yeah, that looks. Ooh, it gives those cool effects on the shields. There we go, that's a bit more interesting, but I still think we need something more. Maybe some white or something. I've just noticed we have room down the side here for a white strip. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, there are lights. Into painting mode. Okay, that might be a bit much. Let's try a white strip. Okay, I have an idea. Generally speaking, I'm pretty much never happy with a paint job, but this one's not too bad. I think it picks out some of the details from the ship, highlights the crown cannon in the middle there quite nicely, and has a nice contrast and stands out a little bit. Looks pretty cool. I'm sure some of you guys could do much better. I also noticed there's a bit missing here. Can't be missing that. So that's a couple of tips on aesthetics. I am by no means the master of making things pretty that Rosefall is, but hopefully this helps out sort of get your head around the basics, and you can start experimenting from there. Don't be afraid to use all sorts of creative blocks for making interesting things and adding details to your ships. Another thing to note is this ship is now more or less complete. We're pretty much done with this tutorial series and we'll be moving on to something new. But I'm going to put this ship up on the workshop for you guys to download and have a look at. You can see how I've done things and, you know, maybe use it yourself. I do hope you enjoyed the episode. Any likes, subs or comments are really awesome. I love hearing from you guys and I read every single comment. As always, take it handy and have a bloody good day.